After one season in Houston, John Wall will not be playing for the Rockets again. Both John Wall and the Houston Rockets agreed to find a trade destination for him, because after all, the Rockets are a rebuilding team with some great young guards, and John Wall at 31 years old just doesn't fit into that. But last year was a pretty decent comeback season for John Wall, after he missed out on all of the 2019-2020 season and most of the 18-19 season due to injury. And last year he put up 20.6 points per game, 7 assists per game, 1.1 steals a game, 3.2 boards, on 31% shooting from 3 on 6 threes a game, and 40% shooting from the field, playing 32 minutes a game and also playing in 40 games. Now, John Wall, you know what you're going to get from him at this stage in his career. Obviously, some of that athleticism has left him with age and those bad injuries he's gotten in those last few years, but he can still score points for you. 20.6 points per game and 7 assists. You're going to get points and some assists, but he's not the most efficient players in the world, shooting 40% from the field, which is below league average. But, you know, at this stage, he can still contribute to a contending team. And that's, I think, where John Wall wants to end up on. He's had a few years now with the Rockets and the Wizards not being a real contending team. The Wizards were a playoff team, but they weren't real contenders. So I think at this stage in his career, John Wall would like to go to a contending team. Not a favourite, because obviously the Lakers and Nets, they're pretty stacked and they can't afford his salary at all. But just a playoff team, a contender, I think that's where he wants to go. So who can realistically trade for John Wall? Well, he's owed over $90 million over the next 2 years, which is not going to be easy to trade for. And as I said, he's going to want to go to a decent contending team. So let's look at 4 teams I think that could possibly trade for him and have a need for a point guard. Most teams at this stage in the season now, obviously most of the off season's done, everyone's got their players in, so not many teams have a big need for a big piece like John Wall making that much money. But some teams could do with a bit of help in the point guard position. So let's look at number 4, and I think the Dallas Mavericks. I think they do have a need for a point guard to play alongside Luka, because he needs a little bit more help back there in the backcourt. It's pretty much just his team. Porzingis last year in the playoffs, major disappointment for them. But I think if Luka, maybe even like Devin Booker when he got Chris Paul beside him, he went up another level. Obviously John Wall is not on Chris Paul's level, but maybe just have a pretty good point guard beside Luka, it might help him out. Who could they trade for him? Well, maybe Porzingis. He's making over $30 million next year. Had a very bad injury record of his own, and majorly disappointed in last year's playoffs. So the Mavericks will be one team that could possibly look at trading for John Wall. At number 3, I got the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, they to be in this because Ben Simmons wants out of Philly. Philly, even though they're not saying it publicly, they're more than happy to get rid of Ben Simmons for the right offer. But no one's offered what they want. And do Philly really want a 31-year-old John Wall? Well, they could do with another point guard, especially because Ben Simmons is going to leave at some stage. And John Wall alongside Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, it's not terrible. Obviously, Philly would have wanted more for Ben Simmons, but realistically, I think D'Angelo Russell is the best point guard you're going to get for Ben Simmons. I don't see them getting Bradley Beal. I don't see them getting Damian Lillard. So, I think John Wall is probably the best they can get really at this stage in the season. Ben Simmons also making 30 million plus. This could work. This would probably have to be a 3-team trade though. You can't really do a straight up swap between a 25-year-old Ben Simmons, who still has plenty of potential, and a 31-year-old, pretty much injury prone now, John Wall. So probably a third team that to come into this, to get a Philly some more assets. But I think Philly, with Ben Simmons wanting out and not wanting to return to training camp, I can see this happening. Because Philly, they need to get off Ben Simmons, and Ben wants out of Philly. At number 2, I got Boston. The Celtics, they did stack up on point guards this offseason, bringing in Dennis Schroeder for the taxpayers' exception, and obviously re-signing Marcus Smart. But, they do have the money to make a big trade like this. Al Horford, they brought him back this offseason. He's not a long-term plan. He's like 35, 36. And he's making almost $30 million. So maybe they can ship on Al Horford and a few other young players that they don't really need to get John Wall in to play alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And John Wall will be more than happy to be the third star in this team. Schroeder and Marcus Smart, they're both good, but I take John Wall over Schroeder anyway. I don't know about Marcus Smart at the moment, but I think the Celtics could do this because they've needed to make a major trade for the last few years. Obviously, this trade won't change too much for them, but I think it will help them. But the only thing I would say is John Wall a bit too similar to Kemba Walker? And Kemba didn't really work out in Boston, but so would John Wall work out there? I don't know. but maybe it's worth it. Maybe Brad Stevens just thinks, let's change things up, let's bring in another experienced guard to play alongside Brown and Tatum. But I think the favourites to trade for John Wall at the moment are the Clippers. I think John Wall has been linked with the Clippers for a good few months now. I've seen rumours around it. And the Clippers, they are one of the few teams, contending teams, that have the assets to give up. Like a Luke Kennard, who's underwhelmed with the Clippers. I think he got overpaid. He's making $16 million a year, so that's one salary. They just traded for Eric Bledsoe around a month ago. He's making around $18 million. I thought that was a really weird move from the Clippers to bring in Eric Bledsoe, but he's a big salary to have in the books if you want to make a trade. So between Kennard's $16 million and Bledsoe's $18, they're nearly there to get John Wall if they want him. Now, the Clippers do have the biggest need for a third star on their team, obviously, especially with Kawhi Leonard injured this year. They need a bit of help alongside Paul George. And can you rely on Reggie Jackson? Now, Reggie Jackson, they re-signed him and he played unbelievable for them in the playoffs. But can you rely on Reggie Jackson the whole way through their regular season and then the playoffs? I don't know, maybe you can. If you can, I think they're fine. They don't really need John Wall if you can guarantee you have that Reggie Jackson all season. But I don't think so. I think the Clippers seem the most realistic place for landing spot for John Wall. LA, I'm sure John Wall will be more than happy to go there. And as a big John Wall fan myself, and even though I'm a Lakers fan, I'd love to see this because the Clippers are probably the best team out of these four teams I've named. And I'd love to see John Wall, after years of injury, and a few years of irrelevance as well, especially last year with the Rockets. I think he deserves to go to a contending team to see what he can do. If that might be as a starting point guard or as a backup point guard, we'll have to wait and see. But we'll have to wait and see if he gets traded in the first place. Will any of these four teams trade for him? Because, as I said, he's making a lot of money and he's on a big contract. Why not just wait past the trade deadline? Maybe no one will trade for him, and then bang, he gets bought out. Would the Rockets buy him out? Well, we didn't think the Pistons would for Blake Griffin, who's making a lot of money and 2 years left, and they did. So maybe, if no one wants to trade for John Wall, the Rockets might end up, trying to find a buyout with John Wall, even though it's not going to be easy because, as I said, $90 million over 2 years. John Wall is not going to want to give up a lot of that money because he's not going to get anywhere near that money for the rest of his career. So a buyout is not going to be easy, but I can definitely see it happening. And if John Wall does get bought out, this list would probably double. Any team would love to have John Wall as a backup point guard. I don't see the Lakers and Nets though. The Lakers and Nets are pretty stacked in the guard position. So those teams I think you can take out of contention. But anyone else, any other contender, I'm pretty sure would happily take John Wall on the minimum for the rest of the season. But as far as trades go, the Mavericks, 76ers, Celtics and Clippers are my favourites. And a team that could do with John Wall are the Pelicans. After losing Lonzo in the offseason, they wanted Kyle Lowry, they didn't get him. Maybe John Wall is that new point guard to bring in, but do they have the assets to give up to bring in John Wall? Because obviously Zion and Brandon Ingram are off limits, so we'll have to wait and see. And are the Pelicans enough of a contender for John Wall to want to go there as well? But anyway guys, that's the video. First of all, tell me, where do you think John Wall will end up landing? Will he get bought out or will he get traded? Me personally, I think he got traded, but I'm not going to write off the buyout because, who really wants to trade for a 31-year-old injury-prone John Wall making almost over $19 million over the next 2 years? But anyway guys, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like it, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stay notified. And with all that said, I'm out of here.